We got some historic news off the top here. 50 years ago today, burglars broke into the Democratic National Committee headquarters in the Watergate complex. You know the name. It was the beginning of an unprecedented political scandal that ultimately led to the downfall of President Richard Nixon. There's the big goodbye. CBS is marking the historic anniversary with a new documentary breaking down exactly what happened, including reporting from CBS News' Lesley Stahl as events unfolded. Here's a clip.
Watergate was not about the burglars. Right. Watergate was about a whole campaign of sabotage and espionage, about cover-up, about a war against the press, a war against the system of justice.
It was a subversion of our democracy.
People have got to know whether or not their president is a crook. Well, I'm not a crook.
He said he wasn't a crook, but that was the point. He was a crook.
The central mysteries still remain. What were those men after at the Watergate? Who sent them? How were they paid? What's making the Republicans nervous is it's beginning to look as though some members of the president's re-election committee may know the answers.
As the January 6 hearings continue in Washington, the Watergate story continues to echo today, offering potential lessons about the current political landscape. Lesley Stahl, who you just saw there a moment ago in that clip, was a rookie reporter at the time and covered the scandal from the very first day. There's another shot of her, and Leslie joins us now. Leslie, good morning.
Gee.
That's you.
Look at myself.
50 years ago.
You look great then, you look great now.
There it is.
There you are. Watergate was a very slow boil. We're in 72, 50 years ago. Yeah. Nixon doesn't resign until 74. So what were those early days like?
Well, first of all, that the anniversary of the break-in, which is today, would come right in the midst of these hearings now. And there really is a resonance. In the early days, almost nobody believed that this break-in was going to amount to anything. And you said I was a rookie. That's why they sent the rookie. It wasn't a story. There were very, very, very few news organizations covering it at all.
What was the moment that made it not just a story the rookie's on, but a story the whole nation is paying attention to?
Well, it finally went into the Senate, and they staged these incredibly long, stunning hearings where there was a narrative, because they started with the lower level people and built and built. And as the hearings progressed, you realize the whole thing was pointing first to the White House, then to the Oval Office. And you kind of get that same sense now that as these hearings progress, you know, the arrow is pointing and moving, and there is that kind of similarity.
I do wonder, though, back then, 80% of Americans watched at least some of the hearings. Yes. Sunday Morning reported on Sunday that 30 to 40 hours was what the average American household consumed in terms of those hearings. They were long, and people were watching.
But there was nothing else to watch. We had 3 networks. All 3 covered them live. If you turned on television or radio, you had it in your face.
Yeah.
Public opinion really, nevertheless, changed because of those hearings.
You note in the documentary that Richard Nixon was a man of contradictions, and many people believe the same thing. Why do you believe it's important to remember that?
Because presidents almost are never one thing, and you want to understand the support that a president in a crisis like we're going through and we went through then, where the honesty in the White House is questioned. You want to understand why the other side is supporting him. And because in both cases, these presidents did things that a great majority of the country liked. You know, Nixon, he was not a down-the-line conservative.
Right.
He was an environmentalist. He had a really good civil rights record.
He started affirmative action.
And he started affirmative action, and that's one reason a lot of women and minorities came into the workforce.
But there was a duality in him.
Yes.
As a man.
And when you look at it, most Americans do believe there's this divide, right? I'm curious, back then, we're coming out of the civil rights movement. Here we are, we're coming out of a different kind of movement, a backlash. What's your take on this divide and how this hearing and these proceedings might move us in a direction one way or the other?
Well, I brought up the idea that public opinion wasn't swayed that much from the hearings, even though 80% of the country was watching them. If you have someone who voted for a president, they are going to be committed until you bang them on the head. And Watergate was a bang on the head when we finally heard the president's voice basically saying, I've been lying to you. And I did get involved in the cover-up. It was illegal. If not for those tapes, I am totally convinced Nixon would have carried through to the end of his term.
And well, the other key thing, and this, Roger Mudd, I remember the clip, he comes out, reports on CBS, the Republican Party, this is a near direct quote, the Republican Party has given up on Richard Nixon.
Wow.
Hard to imagine today.
Yeah, I mean, this is all out in the open, too.
Well, you know, people forget that the Republicans stood by Nixon almost to the very end. It collapsed because of public opinion. The polls he was down in the 20s.
Right.
If he hadn't gotten that low, the Congress would have supported him, and he would not have resigned.
Lesley, 50 years on, we got to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining us. You can see the full documentary, Watergate, High Crimes in the White House tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern, right here on CBS.